Greetings and welcome to the Building Men Podcast, a ministry of Iron Sharpens Iron. You can also see the video on YouTube.
Hello, this is Rex Tigner with Iron Sharpens Iron, Building Men Podcast. And today you can see we're missing a couple people. Some people get to go on vacation while others don't. So that's kind of why we're here. So I'm here today with Pastor Matt Pousseur. He is a dear friend of mine, and I heard he did a talk a few weeks ago, and we want to talk about that. So, hey, man, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rex. Thanks so much for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. To be with you. Looking forward to it. So I heard you did a talk a few weeks ago called Hurts, Habits, and Hang-Ups for Men. I kind of like to unpack that because I really heard a lot of good things about it. So let's kind of what caused you to kind of do something on that?
No, I appreciate that. I had the opportunity to talk to a group of men at a men's event about this idea, hurts, habits, and hang up. If anybody's familiar with the recovery world, I took that language from Celebrate Recovery. I want to give honor where honor is due. It was really kind of birthed out of my own story in a lot of ways. I grew up with a lot of brokenness in my own life, very kind of tragic upbringing, a lot of divorce, brokenness, abuse. And one of the things I struggled to reconcile was I had a deep walk with the Lord, but life hurt more than I felt like it was supposed to hurt.
Wow.
And for a lot of years, I spent a lot of time blaming other people. But the more I sat with the Lord, the more I realized that there was an internal hurt that no one else could own besides me. And God really sent me on this journey of discovering how to step into the brokenness of our own stories, not with shame, but with hope. And the talk actually opened up, and I didn't share all of this in that moment, but it actually started because I had joined the missions field at 18, felt compelled by the Lord to go and serve the least of these. And I was, young and naive, thought I was going to go save the world. And God parked me in a spot where he just worked on my soul for an extended period of time. And I had a really gifted sister in the Lord walk up to me and say, "You're being like Saul." And I was young and naive enough to not know what she meant, that I thought she was complimenting me. And then I realized the look at her face this was not a compliment. And she began to say, God's marked you and called you, but you're hiding among the baggage of your life, and you need to step out from behind the baggage. And so that's actually where I opened up the talk, was just God has called each one of us to be a king in our own way, to have dominion over our homes, to have dominion over our lives, to bring chaos into order, to provide, to protect. But when that moment comes for so many of us, we're not stepping up to the plate. We're hiding in the baggage of our life. And so, Again, it was really just kind of birthed out of my own story of, I want others to experience the freedom that God has brought in my life in this area, because I think it's so essential, not just for men, but for the whole family unit and for ultimately culture and society to flourish.
Yeah. It's amazing that how Satan will use just the smallest little thing to derail you, to knock you off course, or to do whatever he needs to do. And I love what you said is that God parked you. I think God does that with a lot of men, unknowing to the men. God parks them, and they look at it as sometimes as redirection instead of rejection, as opposed to being redirected. And I think that's good. So as you were working through this, I know you get men coming up to you all the time, and I was intrigued with the three. Kind of what are some of the hurts that you see guys are dealing with, and kind of let's talk about, maybe a couple of hurts that you see, and maybe a tool or two that maybe some guy that might be listening here can kind of use to help get through that himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I talked through a framework called Things. And basically what I was saying was, we all have baggage in our life, and there's no shame in the fact that we have baggage. We just have to acknowledge it. We all have our things. And Things is really an acronym for what I believe is the pattern, both into brokenness and out of brokenness. It's the things that we all have. And so T is our triggers. It's a lot of those hurts, the things that trigger us. So whether that's rejection, whether that's fear, a loss of control, anxiety, a father wounds, I deal so much with what people think are present moment hurts that are never present moment hurts. They're always an old hurt that is just showing up in a new way. And so a lot of time I spend with guys and girls, but guys in particular, is helping them see the pattern of hurt in their life. That your marriage problem didn't start with your marriage. It started with some wound in you somewhere. And it's not a blame shifting conversation. It's, I've got to go as deep as the cut to get it healed. And so a lot of it's there. And I think what is confusing for a lot of guys is they're constantly chasing behavior. And that's what I would call the hideout. And so after you've been triggered by a hurt, you tend to go to a hideout, which is a place of comfort and familiarity to deal with what pain you just experienced. And so for a lot of people, it's just passivity. It's hiding behind stuff. It's hiding behind work. It's shutting down emotionally. For others, it's substances. And I think a lot of guys spend so much time trying to solve the hideout problem and not actually dealing with why they went there in the first place.
Yep.
We spend a lot of time in church telling guys to stop going to the hideouts, but never giving them the tools to actually figure out why they went there in the first place.
Amen. Yes. Yeah. So you'll want to finish your acronym? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The next thing I think we tend to do in those hideouts is our insecurities get exposed, in which I begin to tell myself a story about myself for why I got here.
Mhm.
Right? I'm just not worth it. I don't have what it takes to lead in this marriage. I don't have what it takes to be who I need to be at home. And these are never things we say publicly, but it's the things inside of our mind that drive us into dark places. And for a lot of us, those insecurities just are so normal for us. We've been saying them for so long, it's hard to recognize that they are not the voice of God in our life. They're not even the voice of truth. They're often the voice of the accuser that just sounds like us because it's the lies we've been telling ourselves for so long.
Yeah.
And then in those places, a lot of times the end for us becomes our narratives. Our narratives are the stories we have to write to justify why we're there.
Yeah.
It's just easier this way. Or she wouldn't even let me lead her if I tried. Or they wouldn't understand if I was honest, right? We're rational people, so we have to justify this world we've created in our hideouts of sin to help us feel okay about it. And so that's kind of, I think, the end tale of where we all end up. We all end up writing a story about why our life is the way it is. And you can call it excuses. You can call it a narrative. You can call it whatever you want.
Yep.
The truth is we're not stuck there, though, because the other two acronyms are G is grace and S is the Spirit.
Yeah.
And while we all have our brokenness, we all also have access to the grace of God, which meets us in all of those broken places and speaks a better story over us and speaks a better truth over us. And then we all ultimately have access to the Spirit, which is the power to not go down the same road we've been going down for all of these years.
Yeah.
That when I'm triggered now because of the Holy Spirit, I don't have to go to my hideouts, my insecurities, and my narratives. When I'm triggered, I can say, wow, that really hurt. Spirit, would you help me? Would you overcome my weakness here and give me the strength to choose a different story for my life? And so basically what we did is we just kind of walked through what I think are the 4 biggest pitfalls for men, which is passivity, anger, lust, and substances, and how those, I think, are the 4 greatest vices that are keeping men sidelined from the purpose God has for their life.
Oh, absolutely. I deal with so many men that are just sitting there passive. It has a huge call on their life, and they're just sitting there and missing out on it. And, it's a shame. I love what you said about writing the story. I had a guy tell me a long time ago. He told me, he says, "Be careful who you allow to hold the pen that writes your story." And then I found out that he stole it from the internet, but it was still hey, it worked for me at the moment,
Yeah.
and I think you're so right is, when guys start going into hideouts, sometimes they get pretty deep in them.
Mm-hmm.
What's a tool that you've found that really helps a guy when you're talking to him to help him get out of this hideout?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple things that come to mind. I think first, knowing that like the very first man fell into the same trap, specifically around passivity. When you read the Genesis account, it's clear in the text, if you follow it closely, that God was speaking to Adam the rules about the tree. Eve actually wasn't even present when those rules were given.
Yep.
And then when they're standing there and Eve takes the fruit, Adam's standing right there watching her. And I think that's the first case you see of passivity. And it ultimately is what broke humanity in a lot of ways. And so I think for guys, the important thing about the hideout is that you're not the only one that's ever run there.
Right.
Right. Immediately after Adam and Eve sinned, they ran and hid in their shame. And shame, I think, is what keeps so many guys in their hideouts, because they lose their worth in there. They lose the ability to look themselves in the mirror. And I think what I would say is God already knows. He's already in the hideout with you. Like, God didn't wait for Adam to come find him later. God went and pursued Adam in that space. And I would say that to every guy in your hideout, like, God's not afraid of it. He's not embarrassed by it. In fact, he's already paid for it.
Yeah.
That'd be the first thing. I think the second thing I would say is you have to acknowledge that it's a hideout that's hurting you, not helping you.
Yeah.
And for so many guys, it has become the coping mechanism that we've had to use to deal with pain that no one taught us how to deal with. And that's looks different for everybody, right? I think one that is sneaky for a lot of guys is within lust. We just think it's a lust problem. It's very rarely a lust problem. It's almost always an intimacy problem, a rejection problem, an abandonment problem. And so just naming why we're actually there and that it's no longer helping you. I think with substances, guys say all the time too, if I don't do this, I won't know how to have fun. If I don't do this, I don't know how to relax. Like, they don't see the vice is actually got them in their grips, not the other way around.
Yeah, I tell guys all the time, I said, when you give God your past and your pain, I said, he will give it a purpose. When you were stuck on your stupid moments, God wasn't sitting up on his throne, hitting his head going, I can't believe you're doing that again.
Yeah. That's really good.
Some of these things that we go through become the life lessons for our purpose, that we can impact the other people, impact the lives of other people.
Absolutely.
And instead of running from it, man, just think of what you could do if you ran to your story. So, and one of the other things that I want to talk about is we're going to skip over habits. But what's one of the biggest hangups that you see that's holding guys back today too?
I think there's a couple, if I could say two. One would be isolation.
Yeah.
We live in such a connected world that digitally and yet emotionally, particularly men, are so disengaged. I think there's stats out there, you probably know them better than I do, of the amount of men who say they have close friends. It's drastically low, and many of them have one, maybe two. And I've run into a couple of guys recently who say, "Oh, this is my best friend," referring to somebody else. And I can tell by the look on the other guy's face that he's like, I am? Like, friendship is just so unstated. It's so undervalued that I think it's just a huge hang up. The guys don't even feel like they have somebody they can turn to. And if they were to open up, maybe that one they did turn to isn't ready to handle their mess. And so they just stay trapped in that isolation. But I think the other thing is we just have a culture that doesn't allow men to express the things inside of them safely. We're told to be, polite and kind and orderly. And if we're honest, what's inside isn't always polite and kind and orderly. And there's not always venues for men to express that. And so I think some of the biggest hangups are just men don't even know how to. Many fathers of the previous generation didn't teach us how to do it. Church culture doesn't really teach us how to do it. And so I think it's isolation, and then I think it's opportunity.
I take it even one step further. Sometimes I think church culture is afraid of a man opening up, because now what do we do with him? So, and I know one other thing that I really want to talk about before we close, and we're getting close to the end of our time, but your heart and this is my heart, it's just getting guys in circles. I think guys, like you said, are living in isolation. They don't have anybody to call at 2 a.m. in the morning, but yet we can name 6 guys to carry our caskets, you know? And I think that's a shame. I think we should be knowing 6 guys that we can just do life with, you know? And I know you're really big into trying to get guys into circles. Jesus had a circle. I have an inner circle. You have an inner circle. What is you being a pastor? And this is always intrigued me is you being a pastor. You really, really have a heart for this. Kind of open up a little bit about why and what do you see maybe some of the best ways to get guys into circles?
Yeah. Yeah. It was birthed through me from a really early age. I got saved, on the doorsteps of suicide. Honestly, God miraculously intervened in my life, and a young man led me to the Lord that night. And what he did that night was powerful, but what he did every other week after that was probably what ultimately turned my life around. Was that he invited about 6 of us into his basement to watch, at the time, Rob Bell videos and eat Caesar's Pizza and drink Mountain Dew and talk about the Lord.
Yep.
And he didn't know what he was doing. He's a senior in high school. He's just trying to figure it out. But that place of being known for me as a teenage boy who was in extreme brokenness, it was a lifeline for me in a lot of ways. That when I graduated high school, I had created 2 or 3 of those circles or huddles, if you will, of my own by the time I was a senior. And I've really spent my whole life doing that.
Yeah.
I just do it on a different scale now as a pastor. But my belief is that if I can get a couple guys in a circle who don't have to know what they're doing, but they need to know where they want to go, which is closer to the Lord, that God's going to show up in that space and he's going to do a really powerful work. I think what drives me now is I do a lot of weddings, and I'm sad at most weddings when I look down the line of the bride and groom's friends that made the cut list. And when I ask, how do you know them? How do you know them? Most of them haven't talked to them in 2 to 3 years. And it breaks my heart because the guys I had on my row had an open door policy, and still do have an open door policy into my marriage. Right. They can call me at any time. I can call them and say, I just need to unload on you, and you need to tell me where I'm wrong. And I can't tell you the amount of fights that have saved in my marriage, the amount of parenting help I have gotten out of it, just so much value. And I just want that for other guys. And I know it's awkward. I think one of the big things is the awkwardness of being honest. We want to just talk football and shop and hunting, and that's cool. I'm fine with that. I'm not super serious all the time. But at some point, we've got to get to the real conversation. Yeah, because we all want it. We all leave those circles thinking, I wish someone would call me so that I could be honest about it, because I didn't have the courage to be honest in that circle. And just owning that we need it. We need it bad.
It's so funny. I mean, I've got guys like you do. We all carry coins. Everybody, you don't have to carry coins. It's just something that we do and our policy is, if you reach your hand in your pocket and you touch that coin and you get that God nudge for a guy's name, you stop what you're doing and you reach out, because sometimes it's more right than wrong.
Wow.
And, but I just think it's so important that guys like you, like you, that guys, we just need to get out of isolation and find those 3 or 4 guys, like you said, find a video, find some devotionals. If you don't know any, contact us. We'll help you with them.
Yeah.
We'll get you in the right place, but go get a cup of coffee, do a devotional with the guy, and then chat, and it's just so simple, What would you say? Pizza, Mountain Dew, and a basement,
Yeah, that's it. It's all it took.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Couches weren't even comfy.
Yeah. And I think so many times that we today as men is we forget God still moves in the simple. God still moves in the simple. And I think that's so cool. So as we close,
2 quick stories, if you don't mind me sharing real quick.
Yeah.
It's probably about 4 or 5 months ago now. I was painting a bedroom in my house, and the name Todd just kept coming to my mind. Todd. And I thought, well, let me shoot Todd a text. Todd is one of my high school friends. Not super close now, but I shot him a text, and hey man, Lord put you in my heart, I'm praying for you. That was it. Didn't know what I was praying for him. He called me, and Todd never calls. He called me and just says, Matt, we just found out that we miscarried our third kid in a row.
Oh, wow.
At 30 weeks. I don't know what to do.
Mm.
And also, you know, the world just stops in that moment. And I didn't have all the answers for Todd. I've never walked that road.
Right.
But Todd needed to know that the Lord heard him. And it was as simple as me saying, hey, Todd, I hear you. This last Saturday, I was working on my deck. I spent too much time renovating my house. But the name Matt just kept coming to my mind. And I have a really dear friend. He's one of my inner circles. And I was praying for him. And I didn't know why. To be honest, I didn't stop working to text him. I just kept working. And next thing I know, he calls me. And he's just crying. And I said, what's up, man? And he just began to share with me some of the most horrific news someone could ever share with someone. And what he said to me at the end was really powerful. He said, I would have never thought 5 years ago I would have ever had somebody who I could call and share this news with and know that they would hear me. And that's all I did. I listened. I didn't give any pastoral advice. I didn't tell him how to get out of it. I just said, hey man, I hear you. And I'm so sorry. And I think it's just that simple. I think sometimes we just overcomplicate it.
I agree. I think you said something there that is so powerful is you just listened, you know, and he knew he had a voice on the other end, but he just needed somebody to listen. And I think that's so powerful. So, yeah. So, you know, guys, you know, we just can't stress the fact to you enough is to get guys around you. Get that circle around you. You know, if you need material, if you need information, if you need what to do next, man, we're available. Contact us and we will help you in any way we can get you in the right stuff. And Pastor Matt, I just really appreciate our time together. And as we close, let's just pray and then we'll close this out. So, dear God, I just thank you for my bud, Pastor Matt, and I just thank you for all you're doing in his life, and I thank you for what you're doing in our lives. And I just pray that if there's a guy that's listening to this podcast, that he heard something today and he doesn't have anybody to reach out to, that he will reach out and we can get him into the right people, with the right people, or around the right people, whatever that looks like. And dear God, I just pray blessings over your hand on Pastor Matt and all he's doing, and just continue to work and move in his life. And thank you. In your name, amen. All right. Thank you, man. Good to be with you.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Look forward to it.
All right, bro. Take care.